Today, I want to talk about some interesting moves that Nintendo is making ahead of the Switch 2's launch that many people are expecting to launch in early 2025. According to all of the reports, whether you think it's coming out this year or next year, that doesn't directly affect this topic, but this was a story that was circulating around heavily last week, and I didn't chime in on it at the time that it was first in the news cycle. However, there is some interesting info that we can take away from this, both with some of the employment shifts that are happening within Nintendo and their game testers, as well as some inside behind the scenes quotes that suggest that they haven't been up to very much lately, and that lull could be indeed tied to what we are pretty much experiencing right now as a lighter software year when it comes to new games from Nintendo and brand new content, not just ports and remasters. So we'll get on the same page with all of the details. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And I want to first kick off this conversation by hopping over to VGC and reading through a detailed typed up article which outlines some layoffs that have happened at a contractor level for Nintendo of America employees. However, there are apparently a lot of jobs being created as well, so there's some context and nuance to this conversation we'll have to deep dive into. But first, let's read through this article. As you can see, the following: Nintendo of America is reportedly cutting 120 contractor roles ahead of Switch 2's launch. While some staff will be let go, others are being made full-time in testing department restructure. That's according to Kotaku reporter Ethan Gatch, who was told some contractors are being laid off while others will be converted to full-time employees. The split between job losses and full-time hires is unclear, with the site's sources claiming the move represents a massive downsizing of the Washington-based testing department, while Nintendo said it would lead to the creation of a significant number of full-time employee positions. Sources said the restructuring comes amid a lull in activity at Nintendo's testing department, with no big first-party Switch games on the horizon. None had any knowledge of anyone having exposure to the Switch's upcoming successor, which VGC reported last month had been delayed from this year to an early 2025 launch. One publishing source suggested the delay was so that Nintendo could prepare stronger first-party software for the console, while others have claimed the move was made to avoid potential hardware supply issues. Nintendo of America has reorganized its product testing functions to drive greater global integration in game development efforts, a spokesperson for Nintendo said. The changes will also better align Nintendo of America with interregional testing procedures and operations. These changes will involve some contractor assignments ending, as well as the creation of a significant number of new full-time employee positions. For all assignments that are ending, the contractors agencies with Nintendo of America support will offer severance packages and provide assistance during their transition. For those contractor associates who will be leaving us, we are tremendously grateful for the important contributions they've made to our business, and we extend our heartfelt thanks for their hard work and service to Nintendo. So obviously, you never like to see layoffs happen at any company on any scale and have people's incomes impacted. It is a reality of what happens in the business world, and I would argue Nintendo's kind of seen the fewest number of jobs downsized. They really have a pretty impressive employee culture from the amount of people who are lifelong Nintendo employees and just don't leave the company. They also seem to take care of their employees very well and want to invest into them longer term, offering very competitive annual salary increases and things over in Japan. And Nintendo of America is definitely a different branch of Nintendo. They are more or less a marketing arm, but this particular department that was being affected is a game testing department. So there's some stuff to unpack there. We didn't get the specifics on how many of these contractors would be converted into full-time positions, but Nintendo is definitely trying to come out and say that that's going to help them realign these employees. Like, many of the jobs are just going to be turned into full-time employee positions and not a contractor role, which is technically an upgrade for the people who are actually going to be converted that way. But the very interesting piece of information within this article here is that there was a lull, according to the employees let go themselves, that they really haven't been doing much in the way of game testing recently. And you might ask why that is, because while the software lineup is definitely looking different this year than it typically does for Nintendo Switch games, it's not to say Nintendo isn't making anything right now. And my theory around this is that this particular branch of testers, Nintendo of America, that are contractors, Nintendo is likely not comfortable with sharing big, major, unannounced projects that may be in the works for their next-gen console. And the idea around the potential internal delay of Switch 2 could tie into software development time. It could also tie into supply chain, having enough of this thing to sell day one. But it would make sense if all of the big new 3D Mario, new Mario Kart, anything in the Zelda franchise, like that big heavy hitter first party type of software lineup for Nintendo, they may want to keep those cards very close to their chest right now and not actually have overseas employees handling or testing those at all. I would be willing to bet that Nintendo would be handling all of that internally in their Japanese headquarters, heavily locked down under NDA, and really not allowing this to leak out in any way, shape, or form. And it could lead some credence to the idea that, yeah, these Nintendo of America game testers that are contractors just haven't had much to do lately, because past Tears of the Kingdom, we did of course see Mario Wonder and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet DLC and some other big first party content, but there really hasn't been much in the way of new games outside of ports and remasters. And I would argue that a lot of those you probably need minimal testing for anyway, because you kind of have the entire blueprint of the game and you're really just recreating it. Sure, bug testing still factors into that, but it's not the same thing as creating like a brand new Ultra Hand type of ability from Tears of the Kingdom, where you probably had to bug test that in so many different aspects. It was a massive open world title with new sky islands above and grounds beneath the entire map of Hyrule. Like, there was a lot, I'm sure, that went into a game of that scope. We are not seeing Nintendo currently market anything to that level. Their biggest new content game that was truly a new game was Princess Peach Showtime, and it's a very simple game. You're talking 7 to 10 hours of gameplay, and while the visuals look nice, it's not really doing anything that is ambitious that would require a ton of bug testing from these individuals. And I think these contractors, while being quoted on not having any real knowledge of Switch 2, really paints the entire picture on what Nintendo was willing to let them work on. Unannounced first-party software during the development, sure, but not your big heavy hitter Switch 2 launch lineup that we are expecting to hit in early 2025. But I do think you can argue also with the conversion of these being direct Nintendo employees now, as opposed to being contractors, maybe they will be brought in behind the scenes on some of these projects under strict NDA and things, and that could be part of the reason for this shift as well. Nintendo likes to organically invest in their own people and expand internally, as opposed to what we see the Sonys and Microsofts of the world do, especially Microsoft, where you just go and acquire a ton of game studios. Nintendo rarely makes acquisitions, and they're typically with companies that they've already had strong partnerships with for years and years before the acquisition happens. And we've also seen them allocate their funds to things like the expansion of the Nintendo headquarters that's actually there, and they're going to internally promote and hire from within the company to kind of have that Nintendo DNA that they talk about all the time, because they see things very differently than most organizations. They operate very differently than most organizations, which is why they're fun to report on and also frustrating at times. But I want to hear from you guys at this point in the video what you make of all these reports and the conversion of a lot of contractors to full-time employees, as well as some layoffs being in there too. Do you think it's a bigger scale than what Nintendo's letting on with these full-time positions, and it really is a mass layoff for a lot of contractors? Do you think that the reports of them having a lull and not a lot of games to test right now are more indicative of there being a Switch 2 around the corner for launch, or does this spell bad news to you? You think that maybe Nintendo really is just not developing very much new software at all right now? I don't think that, but definitely explain your thought process if you do. And are you personally, amongst all the reports at this point in time, expecting a early 2025 launch for Switch 2? Do you think there's still a chance it could come out this year, or do you think we're waiting further into 2025 or even beyond that? So regardless of your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before you leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Go watch the video on screen next if you haven't already. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.